In 1992, a researcher named Artemis Simopoulos published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine that quietly unsettled everything nutritionists thought they knew about omega-3. She had been studying rural Greek islanders, people with remarkably low rates of heart disease, and found their omega-3 levels were comparable to populations eating fish several times a week. The problem was, these islanders were not eating much fish at all. She traced the source. It was a weed, a sprawling, fleshy-leaved plant they added to salads and stews without a second thought. The same plant most American gardeners spend their summers pulling out and throwing in the compost. That discovery changed how researchers think about plant omega-3, and it raises an uncomfortable question for anyone who has ever weeded a garden. How many times have you thrown away something your body was actually asking for? Today we are looking at 12 weeds, plants growing in your lawn, your garden beds, your local fields right now, that contain meaningful amounts of omega-3. Most people have never eaten a single one of them. Most people actively remove them. One honest note before we begin. The omega-3 in plants is primarily ALA, alpha-linolenic acid. Your body uses it directly and converts some of it to the marine forms found in fish, though the conversion rate is modest. Think of these plants as a valuable and largely ignored part of your omega-3 picture, not a replacement for anything your doctor has recommended. Let's start Number 1. Lamb's quarters. Most people have never heard of lamb's quarters. The ones who have know it as a weed, a fast-growing pale green plant with diamond-shaped leaves dusted in a white powder that makes them look slightly frosted, even in midsummer heat. What most people do not know is that lamb's quarters was a staple food crop in North America for thousands of years before European contact. Indigenous communities harvested it deliberately. The seeds were ground into flour. The leaves were eaten like spinach. Archaeological evidence places lamb's quarters consumption in human settlements across the continent going back at least 5,000 years. Then European settlers arrived, introduced spinach and other cultivated greens, and lamb's quarters was reclassified from food to weed in the space of a generation. Here is what that reclassification cost us. Lamb's quarters contains more omega-3 per gram than spinach, more calcium than milk by weight, and more protein than most cultivated leafy greens available in any grocery store. The white powder on the leaves is not disease or damage. It is a natural coating of calcium crystals that the plant produces. Nutritionally, it is one of the most complete wild greens ever analyzed. For anyone over 60 looking to increase omega-3 intake without adding supplements or dramatically changing their diet, lamb's quarters is growing in disturbed soil within walking distance of almost every home in America. It has been doing so for thousands of years. The decision to stop eating it was cultural, not nutritional. How to use it. Young, leaves eaten raw in salads. Mild flavor, similar to spinach but slightly earthier. Larger leaves cooked briefly like spinach. Sautéed in olive oil with garlic. The seeds, harvested in late summer, can be ground and added to flour for baking. Identify carefully. The frosted white coating on the leaves and the diamond-shaped leaf pattern are distinctive. Once you know it, you will see it everywhere. Number 2. Purslane. This is the one Simopoulos was writing about. Purslane is a low, sprawling succulent with thick, fleshy leaves, reddish stems, and a slightly lemony taste that makes it genuinely pleasant to eat raw. It grows in garden beds, in pavement cracks, between vegetable rows, in any patch of disturbed warm soil it can find. Most gardeners pull it out on site. The 1992 paper in the New England Journal of Medicine identified purslane as the key dietary variable, explaining why those Greek islanders had omega-3 levels that researchers could not otherwise account for. They were eating it regularly, casually, as an ordinary part of meals, not as a health food, just as food that had always been there. The numbers are striking. Purslane contains 300 to 400 milligrams of ALA per 100 grams of fresh leaves, the highest omega-3 content of any leafy vegetable ever measured. That is approximately 5 times more than spinach. More remarkably, purslane is one of the only land plants on Earth that contains trace amounts of EPA and DHA, the long-chain marine omega-3s that are otherwise found almost exclusively in fish and algae. No other common garden weed can make that claim. For people over 60, the combination of omega-3 and the anti-inflammatory compounds in purslane addresses two of the most common concerns in aging simultaneously: cardiovascular health and chronic low-grade inflammation that accumulates in joints, arteries, and tissues over decades. One note: purslane contains oxalates, so those prone to kidney stones should enjoy it in moderation rather than in large daily quantities. How to use it: raw in salads. The fleshy leaves have a pleasant crunch and a mild lemon flavor that pairs well with olive oil and lemon dressing. Stirred into cooked dishes in the final minute to preserve the delicate omega-3 content. Heat degrades ALA, so the less cooking the better. The Greek preparation is simple: fresh purslane, olive oil, lemon, salt. That is the preparation that produced the omega-3 levels Simopolis spent a career trying to explain. Start there. Number 3. Wild amaranth. In 1519, Spanish conquistadors arriving in Mexico made a decision that historians now consider one of the most consequential acts of nutritional destruction in recorded history. They banned amaranth. The plant was so central to Aztec civilization, as food, as medicine, as the foundation of ceremonies the Spanish wanted to eliminate, that cultivating it was made a capital offense. Entire fields were burned. Seed stocks were confiscated. A crop that had fed one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the Americas for thousands of years was reclassified as forbidden. It survived anyway. Wild amaranth, a weedy, vigorous relative of the cultivated grain, spread across disturbed soil throughout North and South America and never stopped growing. It grows in your garden right now, almost certainly, as a weed you pull without knowing what it is. Wild amaranth leaves contain meaningful ALA, alongside a protein profile that exceeds most cultivated greens, including all 9 essential amino acids, making it one of the only plants with complete protein in its leaves rather than its seeds. The omega-3 content is lower per gram than purslane, but the nutritional density across all markers is exceptional. For anyone over 60 dealing with muscle maintenance, which becomes increasingly critical after 60 as muscle mass naturally declines, the combination of complete protein and omega-3 in a single weed is genuinely unusual. The civilization the Spanish tried to destroy by eliminating this plant understood something that took nutritional science centuries to catch up to. How to use it: young leaves, under 6 inches tall, eaten raw in salads or cooked exactly like spinach. The flavor is mild and slightly earthy, significantly more approachable than many wild greens. Older leaves become slightly fibrous, but are still nutritious when cooked. The seeds, if you allow the plant to go to seed in late summer, can be harvested and used as a grain. Nutty, slightly sweet, exceptionally nutritious. Most people pull it before it gets that far. Consider letting one plant go to seed. Number 4. Fat hen / goosefoot. Fat hen has one of the least inspiring names in the plant world. It got it because farmers noticed their hens grew fat and healthy when they had access to it. An observation that, in hindsight, should have told the farmers something about what they themselves were eating when they bothered to cook it. This plant, Chenopodium album, also called goosefoot for the shape of its leaves, is the direct wild ancestor of spinach and quinoa. It predates both cultivated descendants by thousands of years and nutritionally outperforms spinach in several categories, including omega-3 content, iron, and protein. Archaeological evidence of fat hen consumption in human settlements across Europe and Asia goes back over 8,000 years. Seeds have been found in the stomach contents of bog bodies, Iron Age people preserved in peat bogs across northern Europe, confirming it was a regular food, not a famine crop. Fat hen contains more ALA than spinach per gram, alongside iron at concentrations that rival meat sources and calcium that exceeds dairy by weight. For people over 60 managing both omega-3 intake and iron levels, iron deficiency remains common in older adults and is frequently overlooked as a contributor to fatigue. Fat hen addresses both in a single plant that is currently classified as a garden weed in most of the Western world. It is growing in your vegetable bed right now, almost certainly between your other plants. The irony of pulling out a plant more nutritious than what you are cultivating is not small. How to use it: cooked like spinach, sautéed briefly in olive oil, added to soups, stirred into eggs. The flavor is mild, slightly mineral, entirely approachable. Young leaves can be eaten raw in small amounts. Older leaves are better cooked as they become slightly bitter raw. The seeds are edible and nutritious, but small enough to be impractical to harvest in large quantities for most home gardeners. Focus on the leaves. They are available from spring through late autumn in most climates. Number 5. Chickweed. Chickweed has a timing advantage that no other plant on this list can claim. It grows in winter. While everything else in the garden is dormant and the ground is cold and bare, chickweed pushes through. It covers beds in a dense, delicate mat of green from late autumn through early spring, arriving precisely at the nutritional gap when fresh greens are most scarce and the body is most depleted after months of stored and preserved food. Traditional populations in temperate climates understood this timing as medicine in itself. The plant that arrives when nothing else will grow, carrying nutrients that winter diets consistently lacked, was not coincidence. It was ecology. Your garden is still running the same seasonal program it always has. Most modern kitchens are no longer reading it. Chickweed contains ALA, alongside vitamin C, B vitamins, calcium, and magnesium, the precise combination of nutrients that traditional winter diets were most deficient in. Research has identified anti-inflammatory activity in chickweed extracts, consistent with its long history of use for skin inflammation and respiratory complaints. For people over 60, the winter availability alone makes it uniquely valuable. A fresh source of omega-3 and micronutrients at exactly the time of year when dietary variety is at its lowest and immune vulnerability is at its highest. It is the only green food freely available in cold months that requires no cultivation, no heating, no storage. It simply appears. How to use it? Raw in winter salads. The flavor is mild, gently grassy, one of the most approachable wild greens available. Blended into smoothies where the delicate flavor disappears entirely. Added to soups in the final minute of cooking. Harvest the young growing tips rather than older stems, which can become slightly stringy. Cutting the plant causes it to branch more vigorously. Harvesting regularly encourages more growth rather than depleting it. Your winter garden is producing food right now. Most people are not collecting it. Number 6. Wood sorrel. Wood sorrel looks like clover. It grows where clover grows, in lawns, along garden paths, in the gaps between paving stones. Most people who have weeded a lawn have pulled it out by the handful without knowing what it was. The leaves are heart-shaped, arranged in groups of 3, and if you have ever chewed one without knowing why, you already know its defining characteristic. It tastes sharply, cleanly of lemon. That tartness is oxalic acid, the same compound that gives rhubarb its flavor. And it is the reason wood sorrel was used as a souring agent in cooking across Europe and North America for centuries, before lemons became widely available. Medieval European cooks used it to make green sauces for fish and poultry. Native American communities ate it fresh and dried it for winter. French chefs still use the cultivated version, Rumex acetosa, in fine cooking. The wild version growing in your lawn is nutritionally identical and entirely free. Wood sorrel contains ALA, alongside vitamin C, at concentrations that historically made it a significant anti-scurvy food in populations without access to citrus. The combination of omega-3 and vitamin C in a single plant is nutritionally interesting because vitamin C supports the vascular health that omega-3 is also working to maintain. 2 compounds, 1 pathway, 1 weed. For people over 60 managing cardiovascular health, that combination in a freely available lawn plant is worth knowing about. The oxalate content means it should be eaten in moderate amounts rather than as a primary food, the same moderation that applies to spinach and purslane. How to use it? A small handful of fresh leaves squeezed over fish, stirred into salad dressings, or eaten directly as a trail snack for the lemon flavor alone. Added to green sauces and herb butters where the tartness replaces lemon juice. The flavor is strong enough that a little goes a long way. Treat it as a seasoning herb rather than a bulk green. It is in your lawn right now. The next time you pull a handful, taste 1 leaf first. Number 7. Shepherd's purse. Shepherd's purse is named for its seed pods. Small, flat, heart-shaped, they hang in rows along the stem and resemble the leather purses that European shepherds carried in the medieval period. Once you know what to look for, The seed pods are unmistakable, and you will find them in almost every garden, every pavement edge, every neglected corner of cultivated land in the temperate world. This plant has been in continuous medical use for longer than almost anything else on this list. Egyptian medical papyri reference it. Dioscorides documented it in the 1st century CE. Traditional Chinese medicine used it for over 2,000 years. It was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia as recently as 1947, meaning it was officially recognized as medicine within living memory before being quietly removed when pharmaceutical alternatives became commercially available. Shepherd's purse contains ALA, alongside compounds that researchers have studied for their effects on blood pressure and circulation. A 2010 study in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirmed significant biological activity in shepherd's purse extracts relevant to cardiovascular function. For people over 60 managing blood pressure, one of the most common health concerns in that demographic, a plant with both omega-3 content and documented cardiovascular research is worth more than a passing mention. It was in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia within your parents' lifetime. It did not stop working when it was removed. How to use it. Young leaves before the plant flowers, eaten raw in salads or cooked briefly like any mild green. The flavor is mildly peppery, similar to watercress. The seed pods are also edible and have a slightly spicy, mustard-like flavor. They belong to the same botanical family as mustard and cabbage. Harvest before the plant flowers for the best flavor. Add to soups, stir-fries, and egg dishes. It grows year-round in mild climates and returns reliably each season without any assistance from you. Number 8. Stinging nettle. You already know this plant introduces itself memorably. The sting disappears entirely with 60 seconds of blanching. What remains is one of the most nutritionally complete wild greens available anywhere in the temperate world, and one of the most consistently underestimated omega-3 sources growing in American gardens. Stinging nettle's ALA content is modest compared to purslane or lamb's quarters. But nettle's omega-3 arrives packaged alongside iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and vitamin K in concentrations that exceed most cultivated greens, which means it is not contributing just one nutrient, but a full complement of the micronutrients that omega-3 metabolism and cardiovascular function both depend on. The mineral context matters more than most people realize. Omega-3 fatty acids require specific cofactors to be metabolized efficiently, magnesium and zinc in particular. Nettle provides both. Eating a food that contains omega-3 alongside the minerals required to process it produces better outcomes than consuming the omega-3 alone. Traditional populations who ate nettle regularly were not just getting one nutrient, they were getting a complete nutritional package that the body recognized as whole food. Roman soldiers rubbed fresh nettles on their legs before long marches through the cold provinces of Britain to stimulate circulation. They understood something about this plant that we filed under folklore and forgot. The circulation research has since confirmed they were not wrong. How to use it. Wear gloves to harvest young spring growth, the top 4 to 6 inches of the plant before flowering. Blanch for 60 seconds in boiling water, which neutralizes the sting completely and leaves no residue. Use exactly as you would cooked spinach. The blanching water is a concentrated mineral broth. Add it to soups and grains rather than discarding it. Dried nettle as tea delivers a significant mineral dose year-round. The sting is not a reason to avoid it. It is simply the price of admission to one of the most nutritious wild plants available. Number 9. Mallow. Mallow is the plant that kept people alive during documented famines. Not metaphorically. In the historical record, during the siege of Jerusalem, during multiple European food failures across the medieval period, during the Irish famine, mallow appears in accounts as the food that sustained populations when everything else had failed. It grows when nothing else will, through drought, through poor soil, through compaction and neglect. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder documented it in the 1st century CE. In the Mediterranean, it is still eaten as a vegetable without ceremony. In most of the rest of the world, it grows in neglected corners and gets pulled up without recognition. Mallow contains ALA alongside the mucilaginous compounds that coat and soothe inflamed mucous membranes throughout the digestive tract. For people over 60 dealing with digestive inflammation, which becomes increasingly common as the gut lining naturally thins with age. Mallow addresses the omega-3 deficit and the gut inflammation simultaneously through separate but complementary mechanisms. The famine populations who survived on it were not just getting calories, they were getting anti-inflammatory compounds in a plant that grew specifically in the conditions that produced famine. Poor soil, drought, disruption. It was built for difficult circumstances. So were the people eating it. How to use it. Young leaves have a mild, slightly mucilaginous texture, added to salads and soups without modification. Fresh or dried leaves, steeped 10 minutes, as tea produce an anti-inflammatory infusion that traditional communities used for digestive and respiratory complaints. The seed pods, called cheeses for their round shape, are edible raw and have a mild, pleasant flavor that children particularly tend to enjoy. The plant growing in the neglected corner of your garden is not a problem. It is a resource that populations in genuine crisis relied on for survival. Number 10. Dandelion. You already know the dandelion. You have spent money trying to remove it. The omega-3 content of dandelion leaves is modest compared to purslane or lamb's quarters. That is not the reason it belongs on this list. Dandelion belongs on this list because of what it does to the omega-3 you consume from every other source. The inulin in dandelion root selectively feeds bifidobacterium and lactobacillus in the gut, the beneficial bacteria responsible for producing the short-chain fatty acids that regulate intestinal inflammation and support the gut lining through which all nutrients, including omega-3, are absorbed. After 60, gut microbiome diversity declines measurably. When the gut lining is inflamed and the beneficial bacterial populations are depleted, omega-3 absorption becomes less efficient regardless of how much you consume. Dandelion root does not provide significant omega-3. It prepares the gut to receive it properly. That distinction matters more than the raw numbers suggest. The bitter compounds in dandelion leaves additionally stimulate bile production before meals, and bile is required for the absorption of all fat-soluble nutrients, omega-3 included. Every traditional food culture that consumed bitter greens before meals was, without knowing it, optimizing fat absorption for everything that followed. How to use it. Young spring leaves raw in salads. The bitterness is mildest before the plant flowers. Older leaves sautéed briefly in olive oil, which significantly reduces the bitterness. Dandelion root tea in the morning. Dried root simmered 10 minutes for the prebiotic effect on gut bacteria. Harvest only from unsprayed ground. The plant in your lawn that you have been removing is performing two functions in your nutritional ecosystem that no supplement currently replicates with comparable efficiency. Harvest it instead. Number 11. Wild violet. Wild violets appear in lawns every spring. Low, heart-shaped leaves, small purple or white flowers that most people consider decorative before mowing over them without a second thought. They have been eaten continuously across Europe, Asia, and North America for centuries. The flowers were candied by Victorian confectioners. The leaves were added to salads and soups across medieval Europe. Native American communities used both the leaves and flowers as food and medicine, with documented consistency across multiple tribal traditions. Wild violet leaves contain ALA alongside one of the highest vitamin C concentrations of any wild green available in temperate climates. Gram for gram, significantly more vitamin C than oranges. The combination of omega-3 and vitamin C in violet leaves is nutritionally relevant because both compounds support vascular endothelial function, the health of the cell lining inside blood vessels, through separate but complementary mechanisms. For anyone over 60 managing cardiovascular health, a plant that addresses both pathways simultaneously in a single leaf is not a minor footnote. It is growing in your lawn and you are mowing it weekly. The flowers are entirely edible and visually striking, a practical way to add wild violet to meals for anyone who finds the idea of eating lawn weeds difficult to commit to. Start with the flowers. The flavor is mild and floral. Then move to the leaves. How to use it. Young leaves raw in salads. Mild flavor, slightly vegetal, entirely approachable. The flowers used as garnish on salads and desserts. Edible, beautiful, and a practical entry point for anyone new to eating wild plants. Leaves added to soups and stews in the final minutes of cooking. The plant returns reliably every spring without any effort from you. the most effortless omega-3 and vitamin C source on this entire list, requiring only the decision to stop mowing it. Plant 12. Cleavers. We end with the plant that has been distributing itself through human clothing and animal fur for longer than agriculture has existed. Cleavers, the sticky, sprawling spring plant whose small burrs attach to everything that passes, has been reproducing by hitchhiking on humans for thousands of years. It has been traveling with us since before we had gardens to put it in. That relationship is old enough that most European languages have a word for it, and most of those words reference its sticking habit. Medieval European herbalists valued cleavers specifically for lymphatic support, the movement and drainage of lymphatic fluid that plays a central role in immune surveillance and the clearance of waste products from tissue. After 60, lymphatic function can become sluggish. The results: slow recovery from infection, tissue fluid retention, persistent fatigue, are common and almost never attributed to their actual cause. Cleavers contains ALA, alongside iridoids and flavonoids that have been studied for diuretic and lymphagogue properties, compounds that support fluid movement through tissue. A 2010 study confirmed antimicrobial activity in cleavers extract against bacterial and fungal strains. For people over 60, the combination of omega-3 and lymphatic support in a single spring plant addresses both the nutrient gap and one of the most overlooked functional declines of aging simultaneously. The plant has been sticking to your clothes every spring walk for your entire life. It was not just traveling with you, it was waiting to be used. The traditional preparation is cold infusion, young stems and leaves steeped in cold water overnight rather than brewed hot. This preserves the delicate compounds that heat degrades. The flavor is fresh and mildly vegetal, entirely neutral. How to use it: cold infusion. Young spring stems and leaves placed in a jar of cold filtered water and left overnight in the refrigerator. Strain and drink the next morning. This is the traditional preparation and the one most consistent with preserving the active compounds. The season for cleavers is short, early spring before the plant becomes woody and covered in burrs. That window is the one to use. The plant that has been attaching itself to your clothing every spring walk was not being a nuisance. It was making itself known.